Cush as the second of five gods called Hermes. Cush, the migrant to Africa from Mesopotamia, was identified with the third Amen in the series. Early on, Amen was assimilated to the god Men. Men's idol was an obscene statue showing a male figure in a state of sexual excitation. It was an appropriate symbol of the god kings of the line of Ham, which was associated with a sexual misdemeanor against Noah. Men, and therefore secondarily Amen, was identified with the Greek god Pan. The idols of this Greek divinity were similar to the Egyptian originals. In Italy, Pan was known as Faunus. Theon, following in the tradition of John Malalas, claimed a man called Faunus equals Pan Men was a relative of Nimrod and a contemporary of Mizraim, means the founder of Egypt and also of Adonai's Dumuzi, Tammuz. He was a famous astrologer and adept in occult arts. He migrated from Italy to Egypt in the time of Mizraim and became king of that land after the death of Mizraim. He was treated as a god by the inhabitants. His proper name was Faunus, but he was also called Hermes, i.e., Mercury, after the planet. The planet Mercury was identified with two Greek divinities, Hermes and Apollo. Achilles Tatius noted the Egyptians identified the planet with the later god. The Egyptian Apollo was Horus. On the ceiling of the Ramesseum, accordingly, Horus was depicted as the god of the planet Mercury. Being an ambivalent planet in astrological terms, Mercury as a morning star was Horus, the Greek Apollo, and Seth, the opponent of Horus, corresponding to the mischievous Greek Hermes as an evening star. The name of the planet Sebek, the inscrutable, reflects the ambiguity of his nature. More commonly in native Egyptian texts, the god of Mercury was Seth. Seth himself, however, was ambivalent. He was even depicted with two heads of the two rivals, Horus and Seth, sprouting from a single set of shoulders. When pagan theology moved in the direction of a single solar cult, the solar aspect of the planet Mercury was emphasized, and his identity with the sun god Horus or Apollo, as in Macrobius's Saturnalia. In the Hermetic system, Hermes was similarly an all-encompassing universal deity identified with the supreme divinity of the ancient solar cults. Since Faunus was the Greek Pan and Pan was equated with the Egyptian Men, it is clear the man-god Faunus of Theon, who was called Hermes or Mercury after the planet, was the Egyptian dual deity Men Horus, which would be Pan Hermes in Greek or Faunus Mercurius in Latin. Both Men and Horus were assimilated to Amen, Hammon, who borrowed the obscene form of Men's icon and the winged sun disk of Horus. The ram-headed solar Amen of Siwa, Amen, of the Trinity, identified with Horus, and corresponding to the biblical Cush and Mar Abbas Katina, was the son of Amen. The later, corresponding to the biblical Ham, was identified with Ptah, but also, as in Jamblichus, with Osiris, the father of Horus, since the Apis bull was both the embodiment of Ptah and a form of Osiris. Here, Amen as Horus, Cush, was the son of Amen as Osiris, Ham. Theon says the Egyptians deified Faunus because he was a man of the Logos. The reference is to the planet god Mercury as a representation of the universal Hermetic Logos. In Egypt itself, Men equals Pan Faunus was identified as a god of fertility with the moon god Khonsu, whose influence over fructifying waters was well known to the Egyptians. Khonsu, in turn, was commonly identified with Thoth, the Logos-like god of wisdom. The Greek Hermes was equated with Thoth as the god of wisdom and with Horus, in this case assimilated to Men and Amen, as the planet Mercury. The philosophic Hermes continued to coexist with and never supplanted the more primitive divinity. Obscene stone pillars called herms, mounted by a bearded head and similar to the figures of Pan and Men, were the hallmark of Hermes along the roadsides of ancient Greece till paganism itself was extinguished by the Christianized Roman Empire.